Your kids could get free or low-cost health coverage from Medicaid or CHIP. Even if you've applied before, they may be eligible now. Kids up to age 19 are covered for checkups, vaccines, dentist visits, hospital care, and more. And if they already have Medicaid or CHIP, remember to renew every year. Visit insurekidsnow.gov or call 877-KIDS-NOW. Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Hello, this is the Harboring Light. I'm Mary. I give a conservative take about the world around me. And before I begin everything, despite differences in the world, I want to say and give immense respect to Charlie Kirk. It's so unfortunate that people like him, they're just simply trying to have a disposition, a conversation other than, yelling and screaming, shouting. And his legacy will not go in vain. And my condolences goes out to his family. And God bless. And when stuff like this happens, I think it's immensely important to remember that despite your differences, it's always important to have an open heart and to listen. And violence is just not the answer. And I'm immensely grateful for the opportunity that I do have a platform to continue on and to say that because you're a conservative, that's not anything a slur. That it's more important to stay driven and to help people understand that because you have different values, different views that doesn't align with someone else, you're not hateful, you're not racist, you're not any of those things. And that it's just unfortunate. The mob mentality and the mass mentality is that just because you have morality, that somehow, some way is wrong. And I can't express enough how deeply I appreciate all you listeners out there, because you all, whether you agree with me or not, you all have a understanding and a discourse to know that, hey man, there's something deeper than what is pushed in the main agenda. Hey man, let's just think outside more than emotions. Let's think about other things. Let's just get to the heart of the matter. And let's hear people who want to just tell it like it is. Like the late and great Bernie Mac said, tell it like a TI is, That's immensely important in the times that we are living in, because people forget that. They don't want to just understand. It's very much important. It's very valuable to just have, simple common sense. And that's what Charlie Kirk was saying in his disposition. Just simple common sense. And he was such a noble man, but he will not be forgotten. Okay, so going on to the rest of the show here. All right, so some of the audio platforms that I'm on Speaker, Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music. These are just to name a few. All right, so it's Friday, and I'm going to continue out and talk about the history behind the English language. Here we go. Excuse me. Okay, the sources to do that. Shoot. Let me start over again. The sources, of course, will be provided for you in this episode. All right, so here we go. Bringing it right on up here. All right. Okay. I had it. You know what? Yes. All right. Says the English language originated in British Isles during the 5th century AD. So following the immigration of 3 Germanic tribes, the Angles, the Saxons, and the Jutes, from which is now northwest Germany, southern Denmark, and the Netherlands. So it's quite interesting, the aspects of this too, when you think about languages and how they progress and develop into their own. And then when you learn a language and you find out, I had when I was back in when I was going to the U of H, I had a friend. She said, "Well, you know what? You never really It seems as if." So I'm paraphrasing here. She was saying, simply put, seems as if you have you learn and you have a more in-depth appreciation, about your own language when you learn other languages. And, for instance, the fact that English in itself is derivative of all these other cultures of, German, and then, going throughout the aspects of Denmark and the Netherlands, it's very, very, very interesting how, and it's understandable how the aspects of English translates to so many different other cultures, because in itself it's the base root of pretty much, from my point of view, base roots of how people describe things, or concepts of something. And I feel the same perspective too. I just have a great appreciation for the aspects of learning different languages too. Because so when I was learning, I've said this before, but I'll say this again, because it's very apropos, to what I'm talking about in the aspects of English and learning languages and how they really interact with the aspects of talking about and bringing forth the mindset of the culture. So when I was about in the 3rd grade, 4th grade, I had very close friends growing up, and they spoke Spanish. And so they said, well, they were just playing around with me and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, what does this mean? What is that? I understood a few things, but, I didn't know very much. And they said, well, Mary, we're going to teach you, stuff, slang, and then we're going to teach you bad words. Because, when you're a kid, hey, she said this, getting away and trying to be adult. But at the same time, it was very appreciative that they were teaching me these things, because they were saying, hey, somebody's saying something, or talking about you, or, they're saying stuff, And so the way in which things are described and how they translate to each different cultures also is very succinct to, I think, to the mentality of the culture. So, the aspects of saying slurs in Spanish is quite different in English saying a slur. And even the undertones in which it expressed in English is very different. And so, again, as I said last week, words it's quite interesting how, the culture shift changes, so does words. And then it's also interesting with the aspects of the fact of changing things to prove your own agendas too, and how that works with the aspects of language in itself. And so, this is again a good foundation of how is, understandable how the English language is so adoptive to so many different aspects of different languages, because look at the tradition of it, how it was formed. Okay, so it says these tribes brought with them languages which evolved into Old English, and the earliest known form of language. So the term English itself derives from the Angles, whose homeland is called England, and the language is known as English. English belongs to the West Germanic branch of the Indo-European language family, which is roots dating back to Proto-Indo-European, which was spoken about around 65,000, to be exact, 6,500 years ago, by nomadic people in the Eurasian steppes. So the language developed further through contact with Latin during Roman occupation, with Old Norse during Viking invasions. So later, French involving the Norman conquest of 1066, all of which significantly influenced vocabulary and grammar. You see how this, integrating of other cultures influences development of language too. That's quite interesting. So I'm going to dig in deeper and expand and talk about other aspects of this. So it says that West Germanic language of the Indo-European language family is closely related to the German, Dutch, and Belgian Flemish languages. So English originating in England is the dominant language in the U.S. and the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, Ireland, New Zealand, and various island nations in the Caribbean Sea. And it's also interesting about the aspects. Okay, so when you get into the UK, where it goes with Ireland, for instance. So the Celtic language. On top of English, the Celtic language in itself is very distinct to the Irish culture. So again, that also is very indicative, and it also is a pinpoint to the culture and to understand about the heritage of the Irish, and how all of these traditional sayings and language forms translate to the what is known as English. Why was the Celtic, which is, and people still uphold that tradition of speaking Celtic in Ireland. Why was that, diluted down, so to speak, and in English more derivative to that nation too, and how also it that translates, worldly with the power of the impact of the English language. It's quite interesting too, because it makes me think about this. So Constantine and the aspects of moving the concept of Christianity to the Western world, and how it was seen as this is the most prevalent religion for people to go in towards and to believe in. And it also this is, I think, a really good example to the aspects of how, certain values translate and stay prevalent throughout generations, and what are the reasons behind that. And the translations, and though they're starkly different concepts, I think at the root or the heart of the matter of both of these concepts of the English language and the religion, or the Judeo-Christian foundation, is that despite the differences in it, and despite the intentions of the people bringing it forth to other cultures, or your interpretation about the Judeo-Christian values, it transcends to people to a way that other religions really don't get in the heart of it. Is that at the root of it, my point of view, is that it's more prevalent to have a unified term of understanding in order to resolve conflict as much as you can possibly, and to also reflect back on that conflict and to move ahead towards it. And I think that within the English language, there's a lot of unity in the aspects of culture differences, and wanting to learn the aspects of English from other countries that's not his native tongue. And this goes back to the aspects of the power and the influence of the American culture too, of how simply, which we're coming into the terms now, we're in the times that we're living in, which is really dark times, unfortunate with the aspects of the late Charlie Kirk. Being in a country where it does not matter what your upbringing was, or you still have some sort of hope and chance to be able to produce, do something if you choose to do that. And so, it's quite understandable with the modernization of America, versus now and today, how the widespread aspects of the English language and the Western culture really influence a lot of people to want to be a part of it. All right, so, okay, did not mean to do that. So, it's also an official language of India, the Philippines, Singapore, and many countries in the sub-Saharan Africa, including South Africa. English is the first choice of foreign language in most other countries of the world, and it has the status that has given the position of a global lingua franca. It is estimated that about 1.5 billion people speak English worldwide, with over 390 million speaking it as their native language. So, origin and basic characteristics. English belongs to the Indo-European family of language and therefore related to most other languages spoken in Europe and Western Asia. From Iceland to India, the parent tongue, called Proto-Indian European, was spoken, as I said, to be exact, 6,500 years ago by nomads believed to have lived on the plains of the Eurasian steppe Germanic. One of the language groups descended from the ancestral speech is usually divided by scholars into three regional groups, which is the Burgundian, East, which is East, the Burgundian, Vandal, and Gothic, all extinct. North, Icelandic, Faroese, Norwegian, Swedish, and Danish. And West, which is German, Dutch, and Flemish. Though closely related to English, German remains far more conservative, a conservative system of inflections. Frankish, spoken by the inhabitants of the Dutch province of Franksland. Forgive me for that. Trying with pronouncing that as best as I can. And the Isles off west of this coast is the language most nearly related to modern English. So Icelandic, which has changed a little over the last 1,000 years, is the living language most nearly resembling of Old English and grammatical structure. Modern English is relatively unaffected, whereas Proto unaffected, for the most part, whereas Proto-Indian European, the ancestral tongue of most the modern European languages, which is German, French, Russian, Greek, was inflected. During the course of thousands of years, English words have been slowly simplified from the inflected variable forms found in Greek language and Russian, which is, arguably the hardest languages to understand and learn because of the again, with the inflection, with the tonal language, and with the on top of learning the grammatical system within Latin, Greek, and Russian. All right, so in German towards in variable forms in Chinese and Vietnamese, the German and Chinese words form the noun man or exceptionatory. German has 4 forms: man, mans, and man, which is, so they're saying about the aspects of, which is really something in how it is connected with Chinese and Vietnamese and these Asian dialects, and because of the tonal ma, and it means completely different things in the accents that are on these things. When you go and talking about something, and ma or ma, it could either mean mother or it could mean horse, depending on your the tonal aspects of the language. When you go to Chinese, and then how that translates to German here, and again with Vietnamese, all these they all are written differently, and they all mean different, have different meanings, which how this translates to the aspects of the English language, where you have there, and there, and the way, the undertone in which it is spelled too. So if you're saying what, and understanding the context when somebody misuses the word. So over there means THERE, or there, it's theirs is possessive. That's different. THEIR. I'm spelling that right. I'm sure it should be. Sometimes I get it transferred. But anyway, and then the list goes on. And that is very, 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 very interesting in the aspects of meaning and overtones, and then the breakdown of miscommunication and understanding why things are set in place in languages in order to see how. Excuse me, I'll be right back. See how the discourse of communication, when you're talking about certain topics, changes when you're using, inflections, overtones, when you're using, word choice. How does that translate in the overall aspects of the conversation? Is it, something simple? It was just inflection that didn't mean to be there, and somebody misconstruing it as something else. And it's just quite interesting with the aspects of how how languages try to remedy these things, and the aspects of the thought process of the culture, or being influenced by other cultures, which is most time the case here. So in English, only nouns and pronouns as in he, him, his, some adjectives as in big, bigger, and biggest, and verbs are inflected. So outside of certain comparative and superlative forms of English, uniquely among European languages, employs uninflected adjectives, the tall man, the tall woman, comparative to Spanish, where you say el hombre alto and la mujer alta. So as for verbs, if the modern English word ride is compared with the corresponding words of Old English and modern German, it will be found that English now has only 5 forms, which is ride, rides, rode, riding, and ridden. Whereas Old English, raden, has 13, and modern German, ritten, has 16. In addition to the simplicities of the inflection, English has 2 other basic characteristics. Their flexibility of function and openness of vocabulary. So flexibility of function has grown over the last 5 centuries as a consequence of the loss of inflections. Words formerly distinguished as nouns or verbs by differences in their forms and are now often used as both nouns and verbs. One can speak, for example, of planning a table or tabling a plan, booking a place, or placing a book, lifting a thumb or thumbing a lift. And the other Indo-European languages, apart from rare exceptions in the Scandinavian languages, nouns and verbs are never identical because of the necessity of separate nouns and verb endings. So in English, forms for traditional pronouns, adjectives, and adverbs can also function as pronouns. Adjectives and adverbs as nouns, pronouns and adverbs and adjectives. One speaks in English as a Frankfurt Book Fair. Put in German, one must add the suffix er to place names and put attributions and nouns together as compounds. So in French, one has no choice but to construct a phrase involving the use of 2 prepositions. So in English, it is now possible to employ a plural noun as an adjunct or a modifier, as in wages and boards and sports and editors, or even in conjunctional groups in prices and incomes, policies and parks and gardens and committees. So any word class may alter its function in this way. So the ins and outs, prepositions becoming nouns, no buts, the conjunction becoming nouns. So openness of vocabulary implies both free admission of words from other languages and the ready creation of compounds and derivatives. So English adopts without change or adapts with slight changes. And so in any word really needing to name some new object or to denote some new processes. So words from more than 350 languages have altered English in this way, like French, Spanish, and Russian, which is what French and Spanish is, considered romantic languages, whereas with Russian it's not. So English frequently forms significant terms from classic Greek words, elements. So although the Germanic language in its sounds and grammar are the bulk of the English vocabulary, it is in fact Romance or classical in origin. So English possession is a system of the orthography, which is a pronunciation of the list below. So I am going to end on saying these things here. Now, to sum it up, what all of, I'm not going to go into more details about that, but, if you are interested, feel free to look at the source about this. So, again, as I said about the aspects of how prevalent, with the basis of different languages, specifically in this case with the English language, the aspects of what is stressed or what is inflicted, what is said, what is not said, is the overall root in cases in which people, it helps to form different concepts or worldviews about things. And it's just, again, how, it's just to hear and see and to understand how when you know a native language of your own, and in this case with the English language, how these things seem sort of, when you're learning it, very uniform, but at the same time it's very expressive in the ways it tries to combat, other overtones from other languages, and, make it more concise and more conceived to get to the point of the message. And so, again, as I said, when you get into the aspects of the literary art form of it, or you get into, all shapes of art in itself, and you get to the media and you get to debates, at the heart of the matter, how effective language is very powerful. And I will also stress this, the importance of using language effectively and using words very effectively, because again, it is the sole entity of getting to the next level when it comes to knowing how to relate to something and more, or more in depth if you choose to. Even as something as simple as job performance, or the way that someone's disposition is, and where they think they should be in a job. Now, there's a lot of factors that comes when the aspects there is about, skill, about appearance, and so forth. But for the most part, where you are in your disposition, or where you want to be in your disposition, and your mindset about something, it all has to do with the way that you can relate and communicate to your environment. And that's really spectacular. All right, so, again, I can't stress enough, feel free to reach out to me. And on to next week. Now, tune in, turn up, and absolutely take care out there. And God bless. Bye-bye.